We're back with a Fox News alert. President Trump ordering a game-changing U.S. military airstrike overnight, leaving Iranian General Qassem Soleimani and Iraqi militia leader Abu Mahdi al-Muhandi dead. Joining us to weigh in, national security analyst Ryan Mauro. Ryan, first of all, thank you very much for joining us on this breaking news day. So what can you tell us about the general, also about the Iraqi leader, both of whom were killed amongst some others?
Well, the big additional point I would make about Qassem Soleimani is that it's not just about Iranian and Hezbollah terror that he was involved in. Al-Qaeda has a very important branch within Iran that teams up with the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps that Soleimani was a part of. That means Soleimani was one of the top collaborators with Al-Qaeda. As for the other individual who was killed, al-Muhandi, he is also a terrorist going back to the 1983 bombings in Kuwait, where he targeted the American and French embassies there. And he's a high-level figure in the Iranian-backed militias within Iraq. So he's also someone that if you wanted to have a day where there's peace and we don't have to be involved in wars all the time, these two guys had to go.
And he was specifically an Iraqi militia commander who had been spotted apparently outside the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad earlier this week. So in terms of the group itself, tell us and give us a little bit more background on the group, the Quds specifically.
Right, so that's like the elite terror sponsoring unit within the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the most loyal force of the Iranian regime that keeps them in power. They're known for shooting students and women in the streets in order to keep that regime in power. So the Iranian people obviously absolutely detest the Quds force and especially Soleimani. So you actually have in the Middle East, the progressives over there are cheering what happened. But then here in the United States, you have progressives freaking out and talking about as if World War III is going to happen and failing to understand that there have been many times where they have cried foul about that in the past.
So what do you think the response will be there in the Middle East?
Well, the Iranian regime does not want to have a broader conflict within the United States, especially because we just taught them a lesson. We are willing to kill your top commanders that previously we chose not to. And we have penetrated your ranks with spies and intelligence gathering as never before. So if you try to attack us, we're probably going to know about it, stop you, and make you pay the price. That is terrifying for members of the Iranian regime, the militias, and the terrorist groups that they sponsor. So they are more panicked than ever. That being said, the regime does believe that they have to respond to some degree to save face, but they don't want it to spiral out of control. My big fear is that some element of the Iranian network within the United States, which we have exposed with the Clarion project, will act on its own or on the orders of Iranian regime forces and carry out an attack on American soil of a small nature, which is possible, especially if someone chooses to do it on their own.
I wanted to ask you specifically about that because that's one of the many concerns that people will have when they wake up this morning and they hear about this. What is the likelihood of that happening? And when you say a small response, what would that be?
Well, if it's coming from the Iranian regime itself, it would probably be trying to kill a diplomat or something like that. Like we remember when there was that plot when they were going to blow up a restaurant in Washington, D.C. in order to kill the Saudi ambassador. So in recent history, they have plotted on American soil. So they'll look to do so again. But again, it's going to be calibrated. They're going to be saying to themselves, well, we want to have revenge and show that we're willing to fight the Americans, but we don't want to actually get into a bigger brawl. But again, there are many elements out there that could act on their own because we've exposed mosques, for example, that have openly on video sworn allegiance to the Iranian regime and even had children recite poetry honoring the Iranian Islamic Revolution. Yeah. That's in America.
So what is your response then when you hear what some of the Democrats had to say already? Specifically, I was bothered by what Ilhan Omar had to say, alleging that this is something that was done by President Trump as a distraction.
There comes a point where Trump derangement syndrome crosses over into blame America first-ism. And that's really what you're seeing right now. If you can detest Trump all you want on a policy level, on a personal level, but when you compare him to the Iranian regimes, which these terrorists like Qassem Soleimani are like the Ted Bundy of the Middle East, and you say there's moral equivalence there, or you frame it as Trump picking a fight with them, ignoring all that type of history, that's a real special form of psychosis at play there. And unfortunately, it's a big benefit for the Iranian regime's propaganda apparatus to make us all panic unnecessarily. I'm concerned, but I'm not panicking.
Right. And it's the last thing we know that the president wants, because he campaigned on bringing all of our troops home and starting or stopping all of these wars around the world. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.